Hi everyone, welcome to this latest edition of pinqTalks. We are delighted today to welcome Damian Hickman, CEO of the International Dispute Resolution Centre, the IDRC in London, and also compare for the amazing Law Rocks. We're going to have a really interesting conversation today. Looking forward to it. We'll join you there. Hi Damian, how are you?
Very well, Iain, and pleasure to be on pinqTalks. It's be interesting to see how it evolves over the coming weeks. So, my name is Damian Hickman, founder and sort of CEO of the IDRC, as everyone knows it. We're 25 years old this year, so it's we've been going for quite a while. And it all started about sort of 30 years ago, and it was an ex-girlfriend's mother asked me to help her run a company, which was the Fleet Arbitration Centre. I think it was the sort of brainchild of Hugh Laddie, who was fed up with travelling to Cusels to do the Pilkington case. So he wanted somewhere closer, so hence the Fleet Arbitration Centre on Fleet Street.
And what did you do there at the Fleet Arbitration Centre?
Yeah, so I sort of managed the whole sort of business. Gillian, who asked me to work there, she was a court reporter, so she was sort of front of house. She sort of knew everybody in the legal community, all very new to me, and that's where I sort of cut my teeth.
So you said that was new to you. Was this your first job, or had you done something prior to that?
No. Before that, I had a designer build company. So and a lot of my clients were sort of ad agencies, law firms, things like that. Then I went abroad for a year and did sort of international sort of offshore finance, and then came home and was thinking, what to do next.
So what was or how did that feel to then move into the world of law? This is an area that you didn't know anything about at that stage. How was it? How did that differ to what you'd seen before?
It certainly different. Lawyers are certainly different to, ad execs and things like that. But interesting, very, very interesting. Very interesting space. And, arbitration 30 years ago, I sort of said to my, friends, I do arbitration. What's arbitration? People don't know, my friends didn't know what arbitration was. Very interesting space, but generally on the whole, really nice people across the board. It's very rare when I've met somebody that, I haven't really sort of gone on with, or that is probably a bit too pretentious, as it were, but it's but generally really good space.
So that was at the Fleet, and then how did then the IDRC come about?
So we were getting busier and busier, and we only had, I think, 3 hearing suites, and I went to our board, the board of directors at the time, and so I said, we need to expand this. We need to make it bigger and better, because London needs something better. Also, I'd just got the LCIA in as a tenant to the Fleet Arbitration Centre. They were expanding as well. So we thought, well, if our current directors don't want to do it, we'll do it ourselves. So then the IDRC was born 1999, and we opened in 2000.
And at that stage, so this was you, and who else was involved at those early days?
So the main drivers, along with myself, was Madeline May and Adrian Winstanley at the LCIA, and we thought the best way to do that is to get the people involved with dispute resolution, arbitration, involved with the IDRC. So we then went to the market and sort of said, we want to set this up. Don't look at it as an investment. It's because London needs this, and we actually put that in the prospectus. And we were looking probably to get about 40, 50 people to invest a small amount of money, because we didn't want any sort of conflicts and we got 80 people, and the 80 we had originally were all the great and the good. So a lot of your people that so obviously sort of Johnny Vida, Sir Michael Carr, Lord Mustall, all these people, we actually got to invest in the IDRC.
And so then the early days of the IDRC, it is unproven really in terms of making it such a kind of big endeavor. Did you then have to go out and market heavily? Did things change? Like how in those early years did you get things moving, that approaches anything like we see today?
I think as regards to market, because we were so busy, it's always been having to build the set, and every time we've moved is because we need more space. So it's a lot of, the dispute resolution world is quite a small world anyhow. So everybody knows anybody anyhow. And it's soon, the word soon got around about the IDRC, and this is the place to hold your hearings. And it was really just then being able to give a centre that everyone was happy with, was pleased with, and was big enough, and was also big enough not just to hold the cases, but how the cases changed as regards to size, the amount of people turning up, and because all that's changed over the years.
Did you have a strategy, a plan to how you thought, right, this is how the IDRC is going to develop. This is how my plan for the future, that I'm going to end up in a fantastic building overlooking St. Paul's with all of these rooms, and or did it happen by accident?
Probably a little bit of both, really. So, I knew it was going to expand because I think dispute resolution was becoming more and more, people were using it, more and more. And also because we don't just do international arbitrations, we obviously do mediations, we do public inquiries, we do disciplinary hearings for professional bodies. So because we had this space, we wanted to use it, the most, sort of cost-effective way, that we could. As we got more and more sort of streams of hearings, different types of hearings, as you could sort of see, we're going to need a bigger space. So we moved from Bream's Buildings, which was our original home, where we had 11,000 square feet with the LCIA and the City Disputes Panel back in the day. They were based there. And then the idea is not only to have hearing rooms, was then to be the landlord of dispute resolution companies as well. So that allowed us to take a bigger building than we potentially needed for the hearings. But the good thing about having a bigger building, it gives you a better building. So better space, because if you have a small building and then you have pillars in the way, which are the bane of any, you don't want a pillar in a hearing room. So it just allowed us to take a bigger building that we wanted to. We could sort of mitigate the cost a bit, because that would be, they would pay rent, our tenants, and it just allowed us to have a bigger and better buildings as we expanded.
The way that you describe it there, in one sense, it all sounds like it went all very smoothly, and it was kind of just a very easy ride. I mean, we know from experience with pinqDR that that's not always the way. What has been, or have you had difficult times during those years, and can you think of any that have been a particularly difficult period, and how you dealt with it?
Yeah. First of all, I think we've been lucky. I think we've been very lucky. More of when we've wanted to move, there's always seems to have been a potential crisis, which has made property costs less than what they should be. So I think when we moved to, or when we were having rent reviews and things like that. So we've been very lucky on the property side of things and how that's cost. But the biggest challenge, I think without a shadow of a doubt, was COVID. So we at the time we were on Fleet Street, and we'd committed to move. So where everyone in COVID was thinking we need a smaller space, we need to sort of cut back on we were moving into a bigger space. So first of all, there was that was a problem, or was a potential problem. Are people going to want to come back to in-person hearings? Because everyone was sort of saying how great it all is. But again, with the challenge, because we'd already been doing virtual or video conferencing with hearings anyhow. So we basically trained up my team to all become these moderators for virtual hearings. And so not only were we doing our own hearings, 18, I think we were probably doing 18 hearings a day as regards to arbitrations, mediations, but we also helped the court out as well. So the courts, so we did quite a few court cases that, they didn't want to be on Skype for business or whatever it was, they wanted to use Zoom. And obviously at the time we were the experts in Zoom. So we did a 10-week case with Justice Foxton. So we helped them out, and we did a lot of so we could keep the business going.
One of the very interesting things about your position, I think, is that you are a non-lawyer. You do a law degree or trained to be a lawyer and have never practiced as a lawyer.
Yeah.
And yet you spend your days surrounded by lawyers, talking to lawyers, will have met more lawyers across this city probably than anybody else.
Yeah.
How has that been? What does that? How do you manage that? Is it? Did you have to learn effectively to think like a lawyer, to speak to people, or do you approach it in a different way? What's the view from being slightly removed from the lawyers who are sitting in the arbitrations and doing the arbitrations?
Yeah, I learned at a very early stage, sort of nearly probably 30 years ago, that obviously the arbitration process is less formal than the courts. So the plan, or not the plan, but I was going to call everybody by their first name. So I call, whether it's the clerks, the solicitors, the barristers, the ex-judges, I call everybody by their first name to make them sort of feel at ease.
Which sounds very normal now, but I know from experience when I joined Chambers 20 years ago, it was still Mr. this, Mr. that.
Absolutely, and this was then. So and you could see, there was a bit of a hello, but then they liked it. They really did. They really did like it, and then that was the service you were going to get, at the IDRC. This is, you were going to be treated as human, and then and we treat everybody the same. So again, with the clerks, with the solicitors, with the barristers, we're sort of friendly to everybody, and also most importantly is we're obviously very client-based, client-focused. So pretty much our ethos is we say yes to everything. If somebody wants it, we will make it happen. They're so involved, stressed, whatever, with their case in hand. The last thing they want to be thinking about is sandwiches and coffee and things like that. So everything should just be on tap.
Now, I want to just ask you a little bit now about how things have changed in the legal profession over the 30 years that you've been involved in it. Have things changed? In one sense, you can say actually we do things very similar to the way we did it 20 or 30 years ago. Have things changed, and has that been a change for the better or worse?
Have things changed? Yes. Are there still cases we do now that were the same as 30 years ago? Yes. How has it changed? Size, as I mentioned earlier. A typical arbitration 20 odd years ago was probably 15, 20 people, 3 arbitrators, counsel, a couple of clients, things like that. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to have 80 people in the arbitration room. So with that in mind, we've had to change the centre. So that's why we've moved, several times to accommodate that. The second big thing is obviously technology. And documents. We had cases that I think at one stage we have 7,000 files in the room, and we actually had to have the floor load tested to make sure that it could, that it could cope with it. Whereas now we don't really see that volume of files anymore. Yes, there's a few. The core bundle comes in, but a lot of that has changed electronically. So then you have to design your rooms in such a way that people can access the documents. It doesn't sight lines. You don't want a big screen in front of you and you're sort of peering around to try and see the witness when you're cross-examining. So there's a lot of things you have to sort of think about. They're probably the two biggest things that have changed over the time. And then the big one, AI round the corner. That's obviously what's coming next.
Has AI started to creep into cases and the way that you're handling cases, or anything that you're seeing so far?
Probably not what we're seeing, because apart from COVID, we've always been on the other side of the door. So we see all these cases that are going on, but really what's going on inside, we don't, because it's all private. We don't really know about. And then you obviously hear stories from the clients, and it's obviously being used already. But how good it is at the moment, and how that can be used in law, is the question, isn't it?
How have you started to think about how AI might fit into the way that cases are run here?
Yeah.
And can you share with us any thoughts about how you think that might look and might develop?
For sure. I mean, probably even before AI came around, was that court reporters are a dying breed. They don't train new court reporters anymore. So your stenographer in the room is going to be a thing of the past in the coming years. So it's how that is replaced. So speech to text, that's going to be a big thing. And again, how that links with the documents, and also with AI, it's all about repetitive tasks. Is there a repetitive task that's going on in the process? And if there is, then obviously that's where AI can assist. But I think I wouldn't want to see AI judging the cases.
And what about virtual hearings? Obviously during COVID there was a lot of that, including very long trials, as you described. Has that died down now in terms of trials, at least? Do you see that actually in-person hearings are now as popular as they were, or have you seen lasting effects?
Our experience is in-person hearings have come back with a bang. I mean, the new centre where we are now, we can do 20 hearings a day, and our last, towards the end of last year, was the busiest we've ever been. I think we did over 400 sitting days in November alone. So that's huge compared to the past. We still do virtual hearings. We do a lot of CMCs, sort of online. I think if it's only a short thing, or if it's a witness halfway around the world, then why fly? But what we're seeing is more sort of hybrid. Lots of hybrid hearings. Most hearings nowadays are hybrid. But the people who are remote are really just observers. So it's so counsel are in the room, witnesses, expert witnesses, obviously the tribunal, all the court participants are in the room, and it's just really observers that are watching remotely.
Yeah, it's one of the things that people raise with me a lot is, particularly when we're talking about pinqDR and how things might develop, is this going to take lawyers' jobs, and will this mean that barristers will no longer be required to do cases? And the answer that I always sort of give is, well, who knows? But I think we're a long way from that now. But I also just based on what you were just saying, I think people like coming together for hearings. There is something you get from an in-person hearing that you don't get from something which is virtual or AI driven in quite the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And the IDRC is, it's the hub. It's the dispute resolution hub. I mean, you come in here on a normal day and it's busy, and you're meeting people that you might not have seen for a few weeks, a few months. There's the tenants, the new tenants. So it's a thriving place, and people really enjoy coming here. And who knows, you might pick up your next case, in our dining area, for example. So it's and people, people like people, hopefully, and this is where they'll see, people.
You mentioned the dining area downstairs, which is very nice, and there's food there at lunchtime. How important was that actually, that you had that kind of facility when you were designing the building here?
Yeah, very important, very important. When we moved, I had this, all these boxes to tick, and then when we moved here, I think I ticked them all and more, which was really, to find this building it's been brilliant. But to have that space downstairs where people can meet, it's invaluable. And the food's great, and people love the food. So
I know from personal experience that arbitrators tend to like going down there. So it's a good way, as you say, to see people who you might not otherwise see. So you mentioned that the number of hearings here can be very large, lots of people in person. You also mentioned the size of cases over the years has increased. Do you see a connection between those two things in terms of the size and also numbers of people who are actually here dealing with those cases?
Yeah, I mean, obviously at the IDRC, the majority of what we do are really big cases, hundreds of millions, billions of pounds value, and with a lot of people involved. There's still, I mean, within our tenants, we've got sport resolutions, and others as well, and they're still doing a lot of virtual hearings because they don't need to come in person. So it's great that we've got the both. That's it's brilliant, but it's because we deal with the big stuff. That's, I think, because the value that's involved, you want your day in court, don't you?
One of the other things that you've been putting together relatively recently is a legal tech hub here, and as I walk through on the first floor here, there's lots of legal tech businesses here. How did that come about, and what's the aim behind that?
So pretty much when we first set up the IDRC, we wanted it to be a hub. We wanted tenants who are involved with dispute resolution. So pretty much from day one, we've had the LCIA always based at the IDRC. When we moved, we've got CEDA who are based here. We've got sport resolutions who are based here. We've got the LMMA based here. So we've always had sort of institutions based here. When we took the new floor, so the first floor that we're on now, it's actually split into two. So half was for more hearing rooms because we needed them, and the other half was going to be for new tenants. And the new tenants, or quite a few of the new tenants that have come in, are legal tech, because I think that's where where it's going, and I'd rather be a part of it. And it's also that they can feed off each other as well, and not only that, but then I find out about it as well. So it's quite good for me that they're here as well, because then I'm sort of kept up to date with with what's happening in the legal world, and then how we need to change IDRC to cope with that in the future.
You've been kind enough to be involved and help us with pinqDR. What's been behind that in terms of your interest in pinqDR?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, that's the first thing, and also unashamedly, I like the people involved with it as well. I think you and Greg and Guy, I think you know what you're talking about, and that's obviously very important for me. If I was going to invest in something, I've got to have confidence in the people that are running it. But you can see that there is a need for it. Yes, we deal with the big stuff, but the smaller stuff, and if you could streamline that arbitration process, then it's a great process, as we all know. And then to do that online and quickly, perfect.
So you mentioned that the original way that the IDRC got going was with a relatively small collection of people who backed the idea and the project. Is that still the case? What has happened in terms of people who are backing the business as years have developed?
Unfortunately, we've lost quite a few of the original shareholders. Unfortunately, but they weren't young when they invested 25 years ago. So to be expected, and because we knew we were going to move towards about 5 years ago, the idea was to get the next generation involved in the IDRC. So we went out and hoping to get probably about 40 new shareholders and raise about £1 million. We're blown away. We got over 100 new people involved with the IDRC. Again, only investing a small amount of money. And I think now we've got either law firms, because law firms are also shareholders. I think 8 of the big law firms here in London. We've got international law firms involved as well. I think we're represented by 65 different law firms, whether it's on a personal basis or the law firm themselves. And I think over 30 arbitration or sets of chambers. And then we've got the institutions. So one of our big shareholders is the Corporation of London, because obviously IDRC is good business for the City of London. So they're one of our original supporters, and they still support us immensely with the Lord Mayor. The Lord Mayor of London always sort of talks about us, and we're always involved with sort of legal UK talks. So that was a really important.
And is that an ongoing thing, or did you? How many times have you done fundraisers?
Just the once. So the original one was about 80, and then I said just over 100 with the one that was 7 years ago now. And I have a list. I have a long list of people that we want to be shareholders, and because although we said it's not to be looked as an investment, it's obviously done well. The centre's done well. But I think in a way it's good for me, because it's more important for me that we give a good centre. It's more important about the centre than it is making a profit. And most of the profits that we raise go back into investing into the centre.
It's interesting you describe that process of raising funds, because when we started with pinqDR, actually, we did something a little bit similar.
Yeah.
Of course, I knew actually that's the way that you did it at the IDRC. But to raise money, we've got 45 investors across the industry, and we found it really. I mean, it's great to have those people because they understand what we're doing, but also great because they can talk about pinqDR and promote us. Did you find similar benefits from being plugged in the way you described? Yeah.
Absolutely. And also the feedback that they give you is invaluable. Because this place has been built on 25 years of feedback. So about this could be, you could do this better. This could be bigger. This could be smaller. And being as though you're part of it, you have no shame at all in saying that the biscuits need more chocolate on, for example. But really important, some really important stuff that is. We need to do that.
So as CEO, you've told us about moving buildings and all and how that was done, how it came about, surviving COVID, fundraisers. What about also being a leader of a team here? How have you gone about building the team? How do you instill your values and how you want the IDRC to be run in that team? Because the experience from a user here is absolutely fantastic. But we see that on the outside. What about on the inside? What's going on?
Yeah, I've got a great team, and the centre's all about the team. And I've got some people that have worked for me for over 20 years, so they know people's nuances, what they like, what they don't like, and the staff. We sort of train it into them that pretty much whatever the client says, it's yes. Say yes, and then we'll work out how to do it. But also, as the ethos is that people really shouldn't have to ask for anything. We know what people need for a hearing, so that should just be there. It should just be given. And the informality about what I said earlier about calling everybody by their first name, that sort of goes through the company. So we just try and make people feel at ease as well with offering hopefully what an excellent service.
What's the secret to being a good leader of a team like that?
Good question, isn't it? I think my management style is more about empowering people. So my door is always open. So people can always talk to me, whether it's clients, whether it's staff, whatever. They're given their their job, their task, whatever they need to do, and if they need my help, they can come and ask me. But I leave it pretty much up to them to come up with the ideas. They'll come to me and think, and I'll say, yeah, great, or what about this and things like that. So that's generally the way it works. So rather than me saying do this, do that, then because that's not my style, and just to be friendly to people, that's such a big thing.
I want to ask you now about your other big passion and actually something that many people really know you from, which is Law Rocks.
Yeah.
Could you just tell us how that came about and what it is and what it does?
So Law Rocks started just over 15 years ago. So a great friend of mine, Nick Child, he came up with this idea about why don't we have a battle of the bands for law firms. It was going to be a one-off gig in London. So we went to, I think, 6 law firms and said, have you got an in-house band? If not, can you get one? We'll put on a gig and then we'll have a battle of the bands competition. And as I said, that was 15 years ago. And now we've got over 300 bands worldwide. We play in 31 cities. Everything we raise goes to charity, and by the end of this year, we'd have raised over $10 million for charities worldwide. So it's we enjoy doing it. It gives something back to the community, and seeing lawyers rock on stage is
good and bad, I imagine.
Mainly good. I mean, it's surprisingly how good they are, and I say it a lot. I'm sure whether when you're at university, it was like Mum, Dad, I want to be a rock star. No, you'll be a lawyer. So there's a lot of people that have got a lot of musical talent, hidden musical talent, that's just bursting to come out. And it's a great night, and we sell out every gig we do.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Amazing. Thank you very much. That's been really interesting to talk to you. Loved it. Thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.